Welcome back to North of the Golden Throne, your online hobby home. And in our last video, we talked about Fulgrim's tragic descent and Angron's bloody rage. But today we turn to one of the most complicated, often misunderstood Primarchs, Perturabo, the master of siege travel, Lord of Iron, and perhaps the most bitter of the Emperor's sons. Let's uncover the story of the man who built countless walls for the Imperium and destroyed them to show his untapped superiority. Unlike a legion like the Emperor's children or 1,000 sons, the Iron Warriors had a strong gene seed and their implementation was successful even without their gene father being found. They were one of the fastest growing legions at the start of the Great Crusade. And as such, they became known for their wars of attrition. They would grind down their enemies with non-stop shelling of artillery. They specialized in trench warfare, fortifications, and heavy vehicle deployment. Their methods were not glorious. It would take war and turn it into a calculation. They would apply force, dominating their enemies by sacrificing their soldiers in brutal, direct fights. Their way of fighting was successful, but there would be a cost of attrition, and combined with their legion being used for garrison duties, it would mean that their numbers would start to diminish as the Great Crusade continued. The Iron Warriors would often be given the brutal, grinding campaigns nobody else wanted, but they excelled in the thankless path. These jobs needed to be done to prosecute a war across the galaxy. This would cause resentment between them and the other legions. The Iron Warriors' victories did not end with glorious applause, but with battlefields covered in dead and despair. Perturabo never felt like he belonged. He was found in the planet of Olympia, where he was praised for his superhuman abilities. He became adopted by the son of a tyrant for his intellect, strength, and military aptitude. Locos would be the most powerful of the warring states. Perturabo exhausted all the knowledge of this planet. He was the most intelligent being on Olympia and urged for more. He would slowly become a cold, brooding figure as he would gaze up into the Eye of Terror, a sight it seemed only he could recognize. The Lord of Iron would accept the Emperor's offer once the Great Crusade arrived. Olympia will become an imperial world and a new seed for the Fourth to use for recruitment. Perturabo will review the battle of his newly adopted sons. His first order, as he would be united with the Iron Warriors, would be for them to commit decimation. 1 out of 10 Astartes would be destroyed by their fellow battle brothers. This would be the punishment for failure. He expected only the best from the warriors under his service. The lives of the Fourth meant nothing, only victory. Perturabo's ideas would isolate him from his brothers, pushing his and his legion's resentment to those that looked down upon them. Imagine being one of the most genius beings to ever exist in the galaxy, but never being celebrated as such. Insults would continue to harden Perturabo. The rivalry between Dorn and Perturabo would be legendary, the two brothers so much alike yet so different. Dorn had been chosen to defend the Imperial Palace, and the Lord of Iron would see this as a direct assault to his competency. The defining moment that would separate Perturabo from any ties of familiarity would be the raising of Olympia. The Primarch and his legion would have to pacify that planet after rebellion sprung out upon the world. The planet would be covered in blood and destruction once the Fourth was done. A cold, calculated campaign where Perturabo would tear down the very walls he created. The thankless job of despair would only continue for eternity. Horus would capitalize on his brother's need for validation and offer him a new place in the galaxy he was creating. When Horus made his opening move against the Emperor, he needed more than raw strength. He needed loyalty from a Primarch who could deliver decisive victories. Perturabo and the Iron Warriors answered the call. At the Drop Site Massacre of Isstvan V, Perturabo's Iron Warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with loyalist Space Marines. At least at first. The plan was simple. Horus feigned weakness, drawing the Emperor's loyal sons into the grinding war of attrition. When the moment was right, Horus gave the signal. That's when Perturabo unleashed his trap. The Iron Warriors turned their bolters and artillery on the surprised brothers, slaughtering the Raven Guard, Salamanders, and Iron Hands. The trenches, bunkers, and kill zones that Perturabo had built became tools of mass betrayal. For Perturabo, Isstvan V wasn't just a battle, it was vindication. He had always believed that the Emperor undervalued him, treating him more like a fortress builder than the other Primarchs, especially Rogal Dorn, who was celebrated as a paragon of loyalty and honor. On Isstvan, Perturabo proved his mastery of destruction, showing no one understood the war's mechanics better than him. But this cost his soul. The massacre cemented the Iron Warriors as one of the most ruthless traitor legions, and confirmed every bitter thought festering in Perturabo's mind. That loyalty was meaningless, that the Imperium never truly saw his worth, and that only through Horus could he finally be stepped out of Dorn's shadow. Isstvan V was a turning point. From the moment forward, Perturabo was no longer the Emperor's unwanted architect. He became the hammer of the traitor legions, and that the walls he built would never again defend humanity, but instead grind it to dust. Perturabo was a cold, calculated demigod who abandoned all of his joy and ambition aside from completing his chosen task. He longed for the adoration of his fallen brothers. He wanted them to marvel at his intellect and abilities. Perturabo became a traitor because he felt overlooked, and because of it, the universe would know 10,000 years of horror from the Iron